My name is Suresh Jora. I am president of Global Home Media, which also publishes South Asian Outlook. And we believe in the right to freedom of expression. So our questions may be a little difficult, but I hope you don't mind answering those.
No problem.
For our viewers, Ruby Dhalla was elected on June 28, 2004. She represents the riding of Brampton, Springdale in Greater Toronto area. And she is the youngest woman elected to the Canadian Parliament and also one of the two first South Asian women elected to political office in North America. Ruby is a woman of many facets, a member of Parliament, a doctor, an actress, a businesswoman, a healthcare professional. Ruby, were you born here in Canada?
First of all, it's a pleasure to be on your show today, and to all of the viewers who are watching South Asian Outlook, it's a pleasure to be here with you today. And to answer your question, Suresh, I was born and raised in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and been raised in Winnipeg for many years before I moved out to Toronto.
And your parents came here at an early age in their lives? Or?
They came here, both my parents immigrated from the Punjab, from India in 1972. So they've been in Canada for many years, and they came, with many hopes and dreams and aspirations and to have a good life for their kids. And so I really commend them for everything that they've done for both my brother and myself.
What were your early experiences in Canada?
Being born and raised here, I grew up in Winnipeg. Winnipeg is a very multicultural type of environment. It's very family-oriented. So it was, for myself, I have great memories growing up. Being able, first of all, in our own home, to have such phenomenal experiences where my mom always gave us the opportunity to explore any of our interests, whether it be in swimming or ballet or gymnastics, baseball and soccer. We used to go for all of these different activities. And growing up in a multicultural neighborhood such as Winnipeg, you have a chance to see so many different traditions and cultures, and I think you just really become a better person. And growing up in Winnipeg, it has really given, I think, me the ability to relate to people from different backgrounds, whether it be socioeconomic backgrounds or cultural backgrounds. So I think that was a great upbringing.
Would you call Winnipeg to be more multicultural than Toronto or Greater Toronto?
No, I think Toronto, Greater Toronto is very multicultural in nature, and I think, when we look at our country, that's, I think, what makes it one of the best countries in the world, because when you look at our nation, we are reflective, of the whole world, and you can see every type of culture, every type of different religion here, and I think, when we as Canadians go abroad, we have the ability to relate to people from around the world, to understand their issues, to understand their challenges, because right here at home, we probably have had experience with having, friends from that part of the world. So I think it's just, Canada is, I think, one of the best countries in the world, and I think Greater Toronto area, has people from many different cultures.
Why did you choose to come to politics?
I think politics is an addiction and is a passion, and I actually got started with the Liberal Party at the age of 12. And I was sponsored for a program called Forum for Young Canadians, and it's a program that invites young people to go to Ottawa. So when I was selected, one of the requirements was that you have to pay $100, get it from your member of parliament. So I was quite young. I didn't even know who it was at that time, and my mom took me with a bus, to go see my member of parliament, and it was David Walker in Winnipeg. And David Walker said to me, John Turner gave me my first start in politics, and I'm going to give you yours. And I was very excited, and I said yes. And he says, for that $100, I'm going to ask you to volunteer. So I thought that was just, amazing. I was an eager, enthusiastic young student, and so he gave me the $100. I said yes, I would volunteer. But I didn't realize that he would make me do it every single Saturday for like one whole year. And I think all of these years later, I'm still volunteering for the Liberal Party to pay off that $100 donation that I got. But it's been a great journey, and the Liberal Party was a part of me ever since growing up.
You chose the right person for that.
Yes.
In 1995, you graduated from the University of Winnipeg with a Bachelor of Science, and in 1999 you graduated as a Doctor of Chiropractic Medicine, and you had your own private practice. So Was political intuition in you so strong that you thought you had to leave that to come into politics?
Well, as I said, I've been involved with the Liberal Party for many years, originally in Manitoba since I was born and raised there, and then when I moved to Toronto about 12 years ago now for school originally to pursue my Doctor of Chiropractic degree, I was involved with the party in many ways. You know, I ran nationally. I was the young youth multiculturalism chair. I sat on the National Women's Commission for many years to promote the participation of women in politics, worked on countless election campaigns, and then I got involved with Mr. Martin and worked on his leadership campaign for the last 3-4 years. And one of the opportunity came about very interestingly. Last election, 2004, I was actually working on the campaign organizing ethnic media, and I was going to be one of the media spokespeople for the campaign. And lo and behold, I'm driving home one day and my phone rings and they said, you know, we're looking for a young woman to run in Brampton, Springdale. And I said, oh, that's great. So I gave them 4 or 5 names. And the individual who was the head of the Ontario campaign says, no, actually, we're looking at you running. And I was quite taken aback and shocked, and I knew that I always wanted to enter politics, and I knew that this was my passion in my life, even when I did practice, and I was with patients, but I was really planning to do it at a later stage in life. You know, but they always say sometimes you never know which path or journey destiny has for you, or which journey God plans for you. So I discussed it with my family back and forth. You know, I've been given this offer, and what should I do? And knowing that I always wanted to do it, you know, my brother was like, there's no money in politics, how can you do it? Him being the businessman. And my mom was like, you're not married yet, and how are you going to get married being in politics? So, you know, it was quite the journey, and we went back and forth, and I finally decided that I wasn't going to do it. So my mom and my brother are kind of hesitant about it, and then I have the Prime Minister's office calling me every 30 seconds saying, we have to send a press release, you have to say yes, you have to say yes. So, you know, it was that point one of the, she's now Deputy Chief of Staff, Michelle Cadario, she called me up and she said, you know, why are you hesitating? And I said, you know, as a woman, I've always been around the political process and been around ministers and MPs, and I know what type of life it is. And she said, and I said, I don't know if this is going to fit into my plans right now where I'm at. I said, you know, I want to get married and I want to have a family, and how is politics going to ever be able to fit into the being able to balance? So she said, you know, let me put you in touch with Christy Clark. And Christy Clark was a deputy premier at that time in British Columbia. So Christy called me and she said, you know, are you crazy? She said, anyone would jump at the opportunity to get appointed into a riding, and, you know, you're hesitating, what's going on? So I told Christy some of my concerns, and I think Christy said something to me. She said, you know, Ruby, you've always talked the talk about women getting involved, and young people and people from different ethnic communities, and now you've been given a chance and you really have to walk the walk. You know, so that really stuck into my mind, and I went back to my mom and my brother, and we decided, and so we decided I wasn't going to do it. So I actually went, yeah, and I went to pray, and I think there was a calling or a little voice inside of me that said that I was making the wrong choice. And I remember after I finished praying, I said to my mom, I said, you know what, I don't think saying no is the right choice, I have to say yes. And I called up the Prime Minister's office and I said yes, and that was May 8th, 2004, and life has never been the same since, so it's been quite an exciting journey.
Well, being in politics, as you've seen, life can be pretty challenging.
Yes.
Have you put the rest of your life on hold when you're in politics right now?
To be honest, Suresh, I think that anyone who's involved as an elected official in politics, there are tremendous sacrifices. There's personal sacrifice, there's family sacrifice, and that's why I said for myself, you know, when I'm working day in and day out, and it's 7 days a week, and trust me, there's like 20-hour days, you know, it's a passion, and you don't really think twice about the fact, you don't realize or think of it as you giving up something. This becomes your life, and for myself, I'm very passionate about what I do, and I love it, so it doesn't seem like work.
A bit of a serious side. Prime Minister Paul Martin, he had coined the term of democratic deficit. In the last election, as you said, you were appointed by Paul Martin to run in the riding of Brampton, Springdale. Mm-hmm. That, of course, is a great compliment to you. For the upcoming election, Michael Ignatieff has been appointed in the riding, or parachuted, as they say, to the riding of Etobicoke Lakeshore. How do you think it's compatible with Paul Martin's objective of solving the problem of democratic deficit in Parliament?
I actually think, Suresh, both in terms of my appointment and Mr. Ignatieff actually had a nomination, take place. But I think in terms of that, I think it speaks volumes to this Prime Minister's commitment and this Liberal Party's commitment, of ensuring that we have a party and that we have, MPs that are elected and nominated who are really reflective of our demographic of our country, that we have young people involved, that we have women involved, that we have people from different ethnic, communities involved. I think that's so incredibly important. And I think, people will look back upon history and they'll realize that it is a Liberal Party, which has been the promoter of multiculturalism, which has been promoter of women getting involved and young people. And I think ultimately the Liberal Party and, this Prime Minister, Paul Martin, have really been the party of the people. So I think the choices that he has made, not only for myself, but in other areas, he has tried to address the democratic deficit. And, when we look at some of these initiatives in regards to the appointment, these are actually policies that were set in place or resolutions that were passed by party members, whereby they have given the leader that mandate. But, in closing, I would say that it does speak volumes about his commitment and his dedication to ensuring that we have a party and a government that's reflective of our country.
Ruby, the number of member of parliaments coming from the women number of parliament members is very low compared to the population.
Yes.
So what would you say about that?
Suresh, it's a very, very good question, and I would have to say that when we look at democracies throughout the world and we look at our own country, I think the fact that we have not been able to achieve, I would say equality in terms of numbers, in terms of representation in Ottawa, in our own federal system, is very unfortunate. And we realize as a nation that even though we've progressed, as an industrialized nation, as one of, the top nations in the world, how much work we have to do when it comes to ensuring that we get more women involved in the political process. And for myself, I've sat on the National Women's Commission within the Liberal Party to try to encourage more women to vote. We've just started a unique program right now in our own caucus whereby candidates who are just running for the first time are being paired up with women who are elected already. And, that type of buddy system and mentorship system, I hope is going to provide a support mechanism, and I hope is going to encourage other women to actually take the plunge and to run. When we look at the political life and we talked about the sacrifices that one has to make, for women it's even tougher in the fact that they may have to balance a family life and children and, all of the other expectations and demands that are placed in women, in conjunction with all of your responsibilities as a parliamentarian. But I think, I hope definitely and think that when more women get involved and get elected, that it's going to inspire and it's going to encourage other young women out there and other women to really get involved. Because I think the voice of women, in politics, regardless of your political party, and I hope it's for the Liberal Party, is so incredibly important. Because when you talk about the areas and issues of healthcare, of childcare, of the economy, of the environment, I think, the voice and perspective of women is unique in itself.
You're right. So how long do you think, how many more elections will we see before we have at least 25% members of parliament coming from the women community?
For myself, being an optimist, I would hope that it's a lot sooner than later. But I think it's a step by step. And, in Ottawa, sitting in the Women's Caucus and speaking up on these issues, we've tried to also ensure, gender equality and gender balance within our other government departments. So in terms of how long it's going to take, I would like to have it to happen much sooner than later. And I would like to issue a challenge to all of the women who are watching this. Get involved, and that doesn't necessarily just mean running as a candidate, but get involved, come out and volunteer, come out and help in the campaign, regardless of your party affiliation, whether it's federal, provincial, or municipal, because the voice of women is so incredibly important.
Now, since you were appointed to the riding by Paul Martin,
Yes.
after the election victory, there was quite an excitement and an expectation that not only amongst the South Asian community, but in general, that you will be finding a place in the cabinet.
Mm-hmm.
What are your views on that?
For myself, I think it's really an honor and a privilege to be elected as a member of Parliament. And not a day goes by when I'm in Ottawa and I look up at the Peace Tower or I sit in the chamber and I kind of pinch myself and say, wow, this is a dream come true. And people have all of these expectations of where you should be, but for myself, my first responsibility for my own self is to ensure that I'm a strong voice for my constituents of Brampton, Springdale, that I'm able to address the issues and the priorities that are really important to them. And, if something like that happens, it's wonderful, but I don't think as an individual, as a parliamentarian who's been given this honor and blessing of being elected, should always look towards that. You should be happy in your place, and whenever it's meant to happen, as a parliamentarian, just as an MP, you can be a great voice for your constituents, and for myself, that's been my first priority.
If the Liberals form a government again, do you think you'll be in the cabinet?
I just hope that I win my seat on January 23rd, and that's what myself and my campaign team and my volunteers are looking towards.
What's your most memorable moment in Parliament?
In Parliament? I would say my most memorable moment really has been the fact that there's been so many young people, especially young girls, who are 8 or 9 years old, and even from some of the ethnic communities, where there's a lot of stereotyping and traditional roles of what a woman should and should not be doing. My most memorable moment has been these 8 or 9-year-old girls that have come up to me, at different events that I've been at, or have written me or have emailed me, and have said, what, Ruby, looking at you, we look up to you as a role model, and we want to be Prime Minister of the country one day. And I've just been taken aback, and sometimes it brings tears to my eyes to read these emails and these letters, that these young girls write. And when they say that, I think to myself, wow, we have such a great future awaiting us. If you have young 8 and 9-year-olds thinking along those lines that they want to run for political office and they want to be Prime Minister of this country, that we as a nation have a bright future. So for myself, just last week I got a letter from a grade 3 student, who was in Vancouver, and said, I follow you and I cut all of your articles and I do all of this, and he says, I hope to be Prime Minister of the country. What do I do to get there? So, young grade 3 girl, and I just thought, wow, if you can change a mindset like that, you know that you're going to go out and make a difference.
What has been your biggest disappointment?
Disappointment, I think, has been, when you're talking about a memorable moment, I'm going to go back to that for 1 second. In terms of an issue, the issue that I've spoken about most in Ottawa has been the one of foreign credential recognition. When people come into Canada, they come with all of these hopes and these dreams and all of these aspirations. And when they get here, they really realize, the difficulty and the challenges, that they have in terms of getting their profession qualifications recognized and accredited. So they come as doctors and lawyers and engineers and nurses, and they come here, and so many of these individuals, end up resorting to working in factories or driving cabs or being security guards, which are very well respected professions. But I always, say to people, sometimes instead of going to an emergency room or a hospital, you can actually go probably take a taxi and find a doctor and not have to wait as long, because we have so much talent. So for myself, I put a motion through, which was to create a separate government department, a secretariat for foreign credential recognition. So instead of the government departments operating in silos, that we would be able to bring all of these departments together and have a coordination and a collaboration and a focal point that would work with the provincial governments, that would work with the regulatory bodies. And this motion was passed in June of this year, and it was actually made into a reality about 2 weeks ago before we went into an election by the Prime Minister and the Minister of Human Resources. And for anyone that knows how things in Ottawa work, this was, I think, a good achievement and really a significant step forward on addressing this issue. And that brings me to what you said about disappointment. For myself, I never went into politics for a job. I've left a very successful career to go into politics. And for myself, I think it's an honor and a privilege for any parliamentarian who's been elected to be able to be there. But when I sit, in the House of Commons and in the chamber, and I see the opposition parties, just using their own personal ambition and their own political gains, for their own personal fortunes, and not talking about issues that are important. not contributing to policy or to debate or having any substantive discussion, around the direction of healthcare. What do we do with all of these immigrants who have such high potential? What do we do about the direction of our economy or meeting labor market challenges? How do we address these important issues? Instead of discussing, debating, or talking about them, they're sitting there day in and day out talking about, their own political games. They'll talk about Gomery, which was an important issue when we dealt with it. But, to keep on bringing it up again and again and again and again, and not moving forward in any other ideas, I think that for myself has been a big disappointment.
Now, about the foreign recognition of the credentials, in South Asian Outlook in November 2002 edition, we had a forum that we started. And I personally feel in the last 3 years nothing much has changed. In fact, when Prime Minister Paul Martin took office, CBC had conducted a sort of a survey of 10 different people, Canadians, to give their views on different topics. So I had at that time mentioned to the Prime Minister, which was broadcast on CBC, that if what is happening in Canada was happening in a third world country, you would call it a big scam.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you have been able to do something towards resolving that issue, because it really is a big scam. If you make people come here based on their qualifications and everything, and then you say they're no good because they're no Canadian experience so-called.
And I think, Suresh, you bring up a very good point. And I think, for myself, even though I was born and raised here, I have seen what family members have gone through. And I've seen, personally, when I look at my constituents and I knock on their doors and I hear, literally the pain in their voices. And I can see the heartache of the difficulty that they've had, and the challenges of just getting their degrees recognized and qualified, or how you're saying it's a catch-22 where they have the experience but they don't have Canadian experience. And I think it is a responsibility of all levels of government, that they work together to address these issues. Because the average person out there who's facing these difficulties, to be honest, they don't care if it's a regulatory issue or a provincial issue or a federal issue. They want to see some concrete action. And I think with the investments that we've made, in the Liberal budgets with $68 million in the creation of these secretariats, it's really going to be a significant step forward in addressing this issue to ensure that these people don't have that experience, where they have a positive experience. And I also think in terms of our economic prosperity and our future success of our country from an economic standpoint, the issue of recognition of foreign credentials is tremendously important. We are a country that has been built on the on immigrants, and if we don't utilize and capitalize upon these talents, that is going to affect, the prosperity of our own nation. And in addition, Suresh, we look at even our immigration system. I think our minister said it best a couple of months ago when he said we have to stop turning it in from a, sort of an application processing system to one of capacity building, to one of addressing the labor market shortages needs of our country. And I think when we look at all the talent that we're bringing in from, different countries, and when we look at all the talent that we have brought in, and we utilize that and get these people integrated, in their respective professions in our labor market of our nation, we are going to have tremendous amount of economic prosperity. And you need that as a nation to compete with these emerging markets, like China and like India, who have unlimited human resources capital.
Yeah, I think because of the problems that people have getting jobs, or doing some business here when they come as immigrants, there are a lot of people who have moved to Australia, New Zealand and other places. So we are looking at loss of talent, which can really help the Canadian economy. Now, people do have, Ruby, a perception about politics being the last resort of a scoundrel. It was not said exactly like that, but that's what it was turned into. And they have a negative perception about politics. So what's your view on that?
To be honest, Suresh, I really hope that people don't have, that perception, and it's changed over time. But just last election, we had 135 newly elected member of parliaments across the country, and many of them under the age of 40. And I think that there's a tremendous amount of energy, of passion, of enthusiasm, and of ideas And I would hope that as new people enter the political process, that Canadians are going to see that, these individuals are really hardworking, because it is 7 days a week, 20 hours a day job, and you do give up and sacrifice a tremendous amount. And when people look at the whole political system, it's kind of a system where they look at the political system, it's only about the people that are elected. But I always try to send the message out that it's really not. This election just isn't about me. This is about you, and this is about us, and this is about our future, as a nation. And people, to ensuring that they come out to vote, it's really about making a choice for the type of country that they want. So I think that perception of politics will hopefully change when people actually realize that we're in this together as a team. It's not just about the people that are elected. The people that are elected are there to represent their constituents. And it's really about, I think, providing people with hope and with inspiration and motivation that they're going to have a bright future.
Well, when you came into the parliament, you had some goals that you set up for yourself. Have you been able to achieve those goals?
I think in some respects, yes. In some, there's still a little bit of work to do, and I think first and foremost for my constituents of Brampton Springdale, the number one priority was in regards to health care. And as a former healthcare provider, I have a great appreciation and understanding of some of the challenges that one faces when they are going in and accessing the services of a doctor, or they can't find a doctor, or they go to a hospital and they have to wait for hours. And I think our $42 billion investment into healthcare and reducing wait times and reducing the times for healthcare services, I think a significant step has been achieved in that. One of the most exciting things for myself has been that right in our own riding of Brampton Springdale, we're going to have one of the world's leading edge state-of-the-art hospitals. It's going to have 608 emergency beds, it's going to have thousands of physicians on board, and it's going to help to ensure that Brampton, as one of the fastest growing cities, really has access, the people have access to doctors and to important healthcare services. For myself, another issue within our riding was in regards to our city. As one of the rapidly fastest growing cities, there are tremendous challenges in regards to infrastructure and transport systems. And I have really tried to work with our different municipal stakeholders and our provincial representatives to ensure that we get more money into the city of Brampton Springdale, into the riding, so that we are able to expand our roads and our highways, and also develop an Excel Ride rapid transit program to connect different parts of the city so that constituents don't have difficulty in accessing the transport. In regards to children and young people, I've really tried to make a concerted effort to speak out at all those schools and really to engage young people. And we've had hundreds of young people come through and volunteer with the office, and I think giving them an insight of what goes on behind the scenes, for a political process has been a significant step forward in terms of achieving a goal. The other goal that I had was really to try to engage some of our other ethnic media outlets, whether it be the Italian community or the Chinese or the South Asian community, into some of the mainstream to ensure that the message of the policies and the programs that government does get out to these ethnic media outlets so that they can disseminate it towards individuals. And I have been very consistent on sending out regular mailings and correspondence to the constituents to really keep them informed. In some areas, as I said, it's a work in progress, and we were only in office now for 18 months and we're at another election, and I hope I'm going to have the privilege and the honor of getting elected again so I can continue upon some of the great work that we've had a chance to do.
As the election was called, as you said, within the 18 months of the last one, and nobody was prepared for that in the sense that you did think there would be a full term. So are there some goals which you have not been able to achieve because of that?
I think, in terms of some of the goals, like foreign credential recognition, having the Secretariat implemented and made into a reality in a year and a half was a phenomenal accomplishment and a significant step forward for, the individuals that are affected by this issue. But I think there is still a lot more work to do in the Secretariat. I would like to ideally see at some point in the very near future, a 1-800 number that individuals can call and get access to information and resources that are available. We need to ensure that we build upon the goingtocanada.com portal, so when people from other countries are applying, that they can actually look at that and see, what else is needed. I also think in terms of work in progress, we as a nation need to ensure that we provide the resources and the tools for our Canadian businesses to be able to remain in Canada, to be able to compete globally, whether it be through human resources or through different types of relationships that are created. We need to ensure that our Canadian businesses remain Canadian and that we employ Canadians. When we're looking at globalization and we're looking at
outsourcing,
as one of the major challenges, we as a nation need to ensure that we have the foundation to deal with these issues. In terms of the riding, I think that there is one of the issues that is very fast approaching us, even in Brampton, is one of guns and crime and drugs and violence. And it is unfortunate the election got called so soon, because I think monies have been given towards this type of initiative. But I think when you look at the area of Brampton, everyone associates the crime and the violence with Toronto, not necessarily in Brampton. But we need to look at dealing with issues with young people, in this respect, to see how do we get kids onto the right path. What type of activities do we need to set up? What type of resources do we need to provide? And Suresh, I have to say this, for myself as someone who was just elected, I think it's really disappointing to see that the opposition parties have played these political games day in and day out and have put their own personal ambitions ahead of what's best for Canadians and called an election. Because Canadians made a choice last year. They made a choice to have a minority government, and they wanted the government, the Liberal Party, to govern. And that is what our Prime Minister did, and that's what the government did in terms of delivering on our commitments and our promises. But the opposition, in particular Conservatives, have done nothing to ensure, to make this work. They have done everything possible to not make it work, and ultimately they're the ones that brought us down.
In the Canadian judicial system, since you are representing the riding in the federal government, don't you think there are more rights for the criminals than for the victims?
I would hope not. I think there's been a number of different judicial legislation and regulations that have been put in place to ensure, that we have sentencing. As you know, in regards to crimes and drugs and the gang violence that's been occurring throughout the country. Prime Minister just announced a few weeks ago a ban on all handguns. And I think having that type of very clear messaging that this is not going to be acceptable is going to create the right environment for victims. And when we talk about criminals, I don't think it's just a matter of getting a criminal and throwing them into jail. I think we need to ensure that we have proper rehabilitation programs so that these people don't reoffend. And we also have to look at some of the root causes. Is there something happening in the family that's causing, especially these young criminals, to go into and take the wrong path into society? Is there something that's causing these young people to go into gangs and drugs and crime and violence? It's not just about money. It's not about having a reactive approach. I think we need to step back and really take a proactive approach to this.
That's good. Ruby, how optimistic are you about being re-elected from the riding in view of the fact that the Conservative Party and the NDP, they have made a lot of noise about the Gomery report and the scandal?
Suresh, in regards to the Gomery report and the scandal, as many viewers who are watching South Asian Outlook are going to know, in this regards, I think that the government, and I know for myself, transparency, accountability, integrity, and ethics are so incredibly important. And for myself as a doctor of chiropractic, prior, those are fundamental qualities and values that I try to hold day in and day out. And we have to realize that there was an inquiry that was held. The people who were had any type of wrongdoing or people who took a misstep, I think, have been under the legal system, either been charged or going through a process right now. The Prime Minister was exonerated in this regard, and I hope Canadians are going to realize that this type of behavior or any type of misappropriation of government funds, of taxpayer funds, is unacceptable. It's not something that anyone who's in government right now has promoted. And I think, transparency, accountability, integrity, I think that's going to be seen by Canadians as critical factors in their parliamentarians. And I have to say this, Suresh, is you can't say that every person of a family is bad. You know, you can't taint every single Liberal member as someone who is corrupt. And that is what the Conservative Party is trying to do. And that's really unfortunate. The Conservative Party and the Conservative candidates have to fight this election on issues. What type of issues, you know, and policies do they have to take to their constituents? You know, what direction do they want to take this country in when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to childcare? If the Conservative Party and Harper are so good at bashing, you know, the Liberals all the time. They never have an agenda of their own. But Canadians, as I said earlier, Canadians want to see a party and politicians who are going to provide them with hope and inspiration, and who are going to provide, you know, a secure future for the children, for the families, and for the seniors.
Well, on behalf of Global Home Media, South Asian Outlook, and TorontoTV, we wish you all the best and hope you come to the federal government again and as part of the cabinet. All the best.
Thank you very much, Suresh. And I just want to say in closing, I really appreciate you taking the time to come today. And I know that both yourself and you know, your partners with TorontoTV, getting out information through the internet, I think is absolutely tremendous. It's really innovative, and I hope that it's going to reach thousands of people in this day and age of technology. And I think is absolutely tremendous that you're getting the message, you know, of the people that are running to the people that matter most, and that is the voters out there. To all of the voters and the viewers that are watching, I would encourage you to get involved in the political campaign, and if anyone would like, you're more than welcome to come to my campaign office and get involved, because this really is a choice about the type of country that we want for our children, our seniors, and our families. And our campaign office is located at 100 Kennedy, which is between Steeles and Queen Street, right in Brampton, and our phone number is 905-450-1126. And once again, Suresh, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
This is our sign room here, and this is my wonderful sign crew that goes out at all hours of the day to make sure that all my signs get up.